Pros, save more on the materials you need to get the job done inside and out at Lowe's. Right now, get 10% off in-stock Trex Naturals decking, now available in more styles. Plus, get 15% off select custom entry, interior, and storm doors. Then, we'll deliver it all straight to your job site to help keep your jobs moving. Get the brands pros trust, priced right, and ready when you need them. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
You are listening to Hilary Topper on Air. And now, here's your host, Hilary Topper.
Welcome to another episode of Hilary Topper on Air, where we bring you the latest insights, tips, and stories from the world of endurance sports and beyond. I'm your host, Hilary Topper, and today we're diving into a topic that can make or break your cycling experience: bike fitting. Whether you're a seasoned triathlete or just starting out, having the right bike fit is essential for comfort, performance, and injury prevention. Joining me today is Tim Gresh, the founder of Greshfit in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Tim is a renowned expert in bike fitting with years of experience helping cyclists and triathletes optimize their rides. From adjusting saddle height to perfecting handlebar reach, Tim has seen it all and is here to share his expertise with us. So, if you've ever wondered how to make your bike feel like an extension of your body, this episode is for you. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
So, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Um, so basically, cycling is my life. It's what I've been doing since I was very young. I got into it when I was basically in middle school, and very quickly got into bike racing. So think a big pack of cyclists in a peloton. So I was doing that kind of stuff, working in bike shops and stuff like that. And then quickly started getting injured, and then that kind of led me down a road of trying to figure out why I was getting injured, and the interaction between my body and my bike, and eventually people that I was racing with started saying, "Hey Tim, could you help me with my bike?" And I was like, "Sure." And then that just kind of ended up turning into a business. My junior year of college, I decided I wanted to just be a professional bike fitter. I was kind of doing it as a hobby up until then. Then I kind of officially started my business, and so I've been a professional bike fitter now for 13 years, full-time professional bike fitter. So that's kind of the quick how I got here.
All right, so let's get right into it. So what exactly is a bike fit, and why is it so important for cyclists and triathletes?
So a bike fit is getting your body kind of connected to the bike as good as we can. And typically when you buy a bike, that doesn't actually happen. You just kind of get handed a bike. And if you're not in a good position, then you're going to develop injuries at some point. Just like when you go to the gym and you got to use good form, when you're on a bike, you have to have good form as well. The thing is, if the bike is not allowing you to have good form, it's kind of holding you in this weird position that you're trying to move through. And your body's very adaptable, and you'll adapt to some extent, but eventually things are going to start to come apart, so to speak. Like if your seat's too high or whatever, your cleats aren't in the right position, and you'll start to get injured. So I just think of bike fitting as a real foundational thing. You really got to start off with a good bike fit if you're going to succeed.
All right, so what are some of the common signs that a cyclist might need a professional bike fit?
Yeah, so whenever I have a new customer, I have them do an intake form, and I have a list of things that I have them check mark. And if they have these things, it's very important for me to understand. So I'm going to go through those. Hands going numb, genitals going numb, feet going numb, lower back pain, upper back, neck discomfort, generally feeling like asymmetrical, like you're kind of sitting weird in the seat, or you're getting saddle sores, that's probably some of the top things I just said there that people have. They shouldn't have it. They maybe think it's part of the sport. And even if it's like, oh, it only happens, an hour into the ride or 2 hours into the ride, so I feel like I can kind of tolerate it. Even if that's not totally acceptable, the bike should feel like a little bit like an extension of your body, and it's kind of working with you, and you really shouldn't get any of those things or any combination of those things. Some people have like all those things, and they just kind of deal with it.
Hmm. Yeah, wow. I should come in and get a fit from you because I definitely
Any of those ring a bell?
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through some of those key elements of bike fitting? Like what exactly do you do?
Yeah. So what I do is I make um, adjustments to the bike. So think like raising your saddle, lowering your saddle, making your bars come closer to you if needed or further out away from you. Changing out equipment on the bike. So one really common one is cranks. Um, the crank is, the part where your pedals are connected to, and that's the part you're turning around. And basically all bikes get the same crank size, and it's like the length of the crank arm that you're turning around. It's kind of silly that every bike gets the same one. So it's common that I'll take those off of the bike and put the right size on. So it's sort of a mix of like adjusting the bike and implementing new pieces of equipment to make the bike work better. Saddles is another big one. When you buy a bike, it just comes with some plain generic saddle. And there's a ton of other saddles out there, and finding the right one is very important. So it's sort of like implementing different pieces of equipment and then positioning everything where it should be.
So interesting. You really, when you go out and buy a bike, you think that, the bike, the where you buy the bike, they're giving you the right fit, and you don't realize that just there's so many different key elements that could be switched out to make it more comfortable for you.
Definitely.
So, talk to us a little bit about how a proper bike fit can impact a rider's comfort during a long ride.
Yeah, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, some of those discomforts. If, say for example, you're getting like saddle sores, or genital numbness, those are really common ones. I mean, you can imagine if you have those things, how that can kind of dominate your ride. Like mentally, you're thinking about this, and it's just like, and then I think about not having it, how much that would impact you. So just like that overall, like getting rid of these obstacles that are kind of holding you back, um, that makes a huge difference, as you could probably imagine. So anyone watching this that is dealing with something like that, um, it's it really lifts your spirit a lot more. You look forward to riding your bike. The bike, you don't look at the bike and think, okay, now I got to do a couple hour training ride, and I'm gonna have a saddle sore, my back's gonna be killing me, whatever. Now imagine like you can do the ride, and really just your legs are gonna be sore, and you're gonna be tired, not deal with that. That's pretty cool.
True. I guess so.
Yeah,
If there was a way to make those legs not hurt so much, that would probably be better.
I can't help you with that, but I can help you with other stuff.
Okay. All right. So talk to us a little bit about injuries. Are there specific adjustments that you would do on a bike fit that would help prevent some of these common injuries that you get from a bike?
Yeah. Obviously there's a lot of different adjustments, but if I'm going to boil it down and maybe simplify it, it would be like when someone comes into me for a bike fit, I always want them to leave the shop more stable than when they came in. And what I mean by that is that if you kind of look at a person sitting on a bike and they're pedaling, maybe look at some of your friends riding, and you might see how like maybe their hips are really rocking in the saddle side to side, they're really bouncing around.
Mhm.
A lot of times that can be from just like not good pedaling form and you just kind of trained. But a lot of times it's like their fit isn't good. And that's, an instability that we need to fix. So making adjustments to the bike to calm that instability down. So by the time they leave the shop, they're sitting in the seat much more calm and quiet. And if I can do that, their chances of getting injured are a lot less. And also any injuries they have currently, I expect those to sort of like start going away. Because anytime you gain stability of like the pelvis, you're going to get results.
Mm. And so when you're talking about a cyclist versus a triathlete, are there different types of bike fits? I mean, I would assume for a triathlon bike, yes, but for a road bike that a triathlete is riding, would it be the same? Would you have to adjust it in a certain way because they are a triathlete?
Yeah, definitely. There will be differences there. I mean, fundamentally, the overall goal is the same. It's that whole stability thing, like I said, getting you stable in the seat. But it would be a different approach. Obviously, with the aero bars and where the cleat is on the bottom of your shoe, the clip that you clip in, where that is positioned. Generally, like for example, I like having that further back for a triathlete than maybe for a road rider. So there are some kind of differences to the discipline overall, but generally the goal is the same, like improve comfort, efficiency, so you can get more power, better breathing, things like that.
Interesting. And in terms of bike fitting, right? There are many people who are out there doing bike fitting. They either use like a computer and the whole thing is like computerized, right? And then there are some people who just do it by eye. Um, what's the difference and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So I basically use my eye,
Hmm.
and a common thing in the bike industry is to use motion capture or like sensors, kind of like you described. And I avoid that because it's a little bit of a trap. Um, See, when you're fitting somebody, you're working with the body and a bike, and you're having a person that has problems, whatever that may be, lower back pain, saddle sores, whatever, and you need to problem solve that. And if you're just kind of putting sensors on them and kind of staring at a screen and looking at numbers and trying to position them based off of kind of a system, you're kind of like process working. You're not really problem solving. So there's a really big difference. And a really common fitting system out there is called retool. So a
Hmm.
lot of people are familiar with that. And that's not really, it really depends on the fitter that's using it, but all too often that can be used as like, that's the determining thing for the fitter rather than just kind of using their intuition. And there's this Australian bike fitter named Steve Hogg. He's probably the best in the world. And he's basically my mentor that really got me into fitting and helped me through my injuries way back when I was racing. And he's the first person I ever found that was just like not putting everything into a box and making it like a one size fits all thing. He was thinking of it more as like um, looking at injuries and asymmetries of the rider and stuff like that, and just using your eyes and ears to try to find the result and problem solve. And that's worked really well. And I've pretty much done that my whole career. I don't think that like retool fitters are bad necessarily. I think it's maybe a starting point at best. But my advice for anybody is like any fitter that's kind of like advertising the tools that they use more than them, that can be a little bit of a maybe if you're having some serious injuries, uh, you may not be able to get the results out of that. You want to find a fitter that is kind of a good reputation, and the focus is a little bit more about them and their skills and their experience rather than like this is a retool fitter. Like I want to be get fitted by almost like you go to a doctor. You want to see a doctor that has a good, they're going by their name, not like this doctor uses this like kind of scalpel, or I don't know, like it's like I don't care what scalpel you have, like what skills do you have, it's that kind of thing.
Hmm. Cool. Um, do you have a question?
Oh,
Uh,
me? Oh, there's someone here.
yeah, actually, can you state your name and ask the question?
So my name's Ray Cushmore. I'm part of Hillary's We Are Endurance group. and I do triathlons. And Hillary brought up before how bike fitting changes, depending on the bike. But can the bike fit also change depending on what you're training for? Such as, if you're doing, a sprint triathlon and you're going for, maybe a 10-mile, bike ride versus training for a cross country ride or, century rides. Does your fit depend on, what the focus of what your posture will be? You know.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, 100% it does. And like whenever I do a fit with somebody, we usually start off with like basically a sit down chat. And most fitters will typically do this. And just kind of like get an idea, like how long are you, what are your expectations out of the bike? And what are you using it for? So definitely someone that's doing like a full distance Ironman, I'm going to approach that differently than someone that's doing like sprint 100% or even like a half. And also another layer too is like, are you doing, what are you doing this year and what are you doing like next year? And kind of like wrapping it all together. But yeah, 100% that does play a role.
And does your fit change? Let's assume everything else is equal. The races you're in, or the events you're in, are the same. You're still on the same bike. Does your fit change over time depending on your fitness level, and I guess even your age, you know?
Yeah, it does. I'll often see customers back for like checkups. Um, I guess I don't really have necessarily a time on that, but
Okay.
generally, if someone like loses a lot of weight, or there's like a big change in their fitness level, or they're changing to like a different bike, then definitely the position will change. So it's very individual. I'd say for someone that's like pretty much well into the sport, they're pretty dialed in, their body weight is kind of where it's been for a while. Their position will stay pretty static, but I
Mhm.
think for like a newer rider, they would get fitted, and then there's going to be like a new version of them maybe in a year, and then they'll probably want to need to get fitted again.
Yeah, because I would assume that, when you're dealing with a beginning rider, most of the time they're up on their handles, because that's a more comfortable position. But over time, and as they get used to the bike, their fitness improves, they're going to be spending more time down on the handles, or, depending on the race. So I would assume that would, but, I could be wrong there, that changes how you approach the fit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it does. Yeah, and also like the more someone rides, like speaking of a beginner, like the more you ride, the more you kind of maybe discover what do you want out of the bike and what don't you like about the bike. So the more someone rides, the more feedback they can give me to help them. So a lot of
Hmm.
times if I fit somebody initially and they're kind of newer to the sport, I'll position them and then I'll maybe see them in a year and it's like, all right, now I really hate this saddle, or now I can start to I'm finding that I can get lower. And it's like, okay, now we can start doing that. And they can give me that feedback. But like a newer rider, I'm sort of trying to do the best I can, but they might not have a lot of feedback to really give me yet because they
Right.
haven't like progressed enough into the sport.
Hmm. What
You
are
know,
I'm sorry, go ahead,
sorry.
Hillary.
What I thought was interesting, and I'm curious what you think here, is can you just get a bike off the shelf and start riding and never have a bike fit? I mean, or is that really impractical?
You can, yeah, and that's what most people do, honestly. Um, but eventually, I'd say eventually most people end up getting injured. Um, your body's very adaptable, and it's amazing what you can kind of like will yourself through and just kind of make the bike work if you just kind of get it and never get fitted. But there are a lot of people that have never gotten fitted and they may not realize how good they could feel on the bike if they did. And I'd say a lot of people also maybe like tweak their position a little bit on their own and like adjust things. And I think a lot of times people can kind of get it like sort of in the ballpark. Um, but eventually you'll probably get injured, especially as you start increasing your training. There's a big difference between just kind of riding, say, a little bit on the weekend, like kind of very casually, and like training. It's a big difference. And then once you start demanding that out of your body, any of the little things that might be off with your position, they're going to start popping up. And that's going to, that's going to really set you back.
Interesting.
So is there kind of like a common dividing line between, is it, riding 2 or 3 hours a week, and you don't need a bike fit because you're just not spending that much time on the bike versus, okay, now you're riding, 5 or 6 hours a week, is there something, especially as, people come up to us and ask for advice, we want to provide, the best advice on, what's a good dividing line?
It's a good question. I don't have one set yet. I would say if you're riding like at least 2 to 3 times a week, maybe we'll just keep it simple there. I'd say at that point, like then it's a decent amount. Rather than if you were just riding once a week, once every other week, I mean that's not a whole lot. So I guess you can kind of get by.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once you're riding a couple times a week, then definitely that's when like you should do it. But also too, like I said, like that kind of just getting familiar with the bike and understanding what you want out of it. I think there's a lot of utility is once you get a bike, like let's say you buy it from like a local bike shop, take them up on like usually they'll have like a complimentary, just like a quick fit. Take them up on that, have them kind of
Right.
generally eyeball you, and that'll kind of get you in an okay position and just ride the bike for like a year, get used to it, get used to the shifting and everything. And then maybe at that point, start considering like a professional, like full-time fitter who will take like a couple hours with you, which is kind of like, which is essentially what I would do, is, kind of pulling back the layers and really kind of diving in.
Mm-hmm. And, you mentioned a couple of common complaints, that people come up with, say, oh, saddle sores or, after 30 minutes, it really hurts, or back. What are the common complaints that would say, okay, you should really go with a bike fit?
Related to saddles.
Well, just related to anything being on the bike that would say, okay, if I'm hearing this complaint, then you should be getting a bike fit.
Yeah. I say genital numbness, that
Mm-hmm.
happens pretty often and people just kind of ignore it, especially guys. If that happens like really at all, even if it's like every now and then, like sometimes you'll just notice it like on a hard effort on your trainer or something, definitely should get a bike fit.
Mm-hmm.
Lower back pain, any kind of knee pain, even if, and especially if it's one knee and not the other. Um, and also like foot stuff, like like toes going numb, not related to cold, but like all of a sudden your toes go numb or your feet kind of feel like hot. Things like that,
And
like
it's
you need a
not
bike
30
fit.
degrees out.
And it's not 30 degrees out.
Yeah.
It's like hot out and your toes are going numb. That can happen. It's just like you're
I,
cutting off circulation.
that's
And
interesting. I've never heard of that.
yeah, that can happen. And also, I'd say hand numbness is a big one. A lot of people, their hands will go numb. A little bit less common in triathletes. Hands going numb will happen a lot for like road riders on like just the normal, traditional like curved road handlebars. But sometimes triathletes can get it when they're on like the bull horns. But I'd say probably some of the top stuff there, or any
Hmm.
combination of those things.
Yeah, that's interesting because, if you're doing a 2 or 3 hour ride, you know, that's not uncommon, for your hands because just because you're in that one position for so long.
Yeah.
But even if it is a 2 or 3 hour ride, is that an indication that you should think about a bike fit?
Yes. Yeah, if you do like even a long ride like that and
Yeah.
you're getting those discomforts. Now there's obviously a being on your bike for a long time can be uncomfortable. Our expectation of being on the bike isn't like you're sitting on a couch,
Right,
but you
right,
should be, I would say the best way to describe it is like you should be reasonably comfortable to where like the discomfort that you're feeling doesn't dominate the ride and you're like, man, this really sucks. I want to get off this bike. I hate this.
right.
Um, you know, Going back to the saddle, along with like the genital numbness, is just like that generally feeling like, man, my saddle hurts. Like I don't want to be in this seat. I want to get off the bike. And then like when you have another training ride, you're kind of dreading it. That's where you kind of draw the line. But
Right.
overall, if it's just like, it was hard, I'm a little my butt's a little sore. Everyone has a different pain tolerance, but I'd say that'd probably be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, because I was going to say, there's a limit to how much, if you're going to go for a 4 or 5 hour ride, you're going to be sore,
Yeah,
So, there's a limit to saying, okay, there's a problem, or this was just a long ride, you know.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Um,
what advice would you give someone who's never had a bike fit before but considering it?
um, my advice would be, start thinking about maybe some of the discomforts that I mentioned. Are you having any of those things? Maybe write a log or keep a log of some of those things. And maybe start asking around. Like, so obviously if you're in the Westchester area, like I'm here, I'm happy to help. Southeastern PA is where I'm located, but probably start asking around your cycling community. Like, are there any good reputable bike fitters that are good at like problem solving and like sorting out injuries? Probably avoid a busy retail bike shop for fitting because they're probably not going to quite be able to do it and give you the attention. But just ask your local community about like who's like a good bike fitter in your area. That's how I get most of my business is basically like the cycling community and even triathlon. It's a small community and there's a word of mouth. And usually someone asks whatever. Oh yeah, I saw Tim, and then they end up here. So as long as you just ask one of your friends, you're gonna find your local like fitter who's good. And then oftentimes, most good bike fitters, they'll welcome like a phone call and just give them a shout and just talk through some of the stuff that you have and whether or not like the bike fit makes sense for you and how they might be able to help you.
So, can you share with us one of the most challenging or unique bike fitting cases that you've worked on?
Yeah, I've had a lot of them. I think the most challenging was I had a customer with a club foot on one foot was a club foot and the other foot was not. So their one foot was actually like about two sizes smaller than the other.
Wow.
So we had to order in two different size shoes. And on the smaller foot, in that smaller shoe, the club foot, they're not able to reach as far down to the pedal stroke. So we had to put a bunch of like shims under the shoe, like a cleat shim, so that that leg could pedal through the stroke equally to the other side. And once we did that, the rider was very stable and looked symmetrical in the seat. Before we did that, they weren't, and we're getting all kinds of injuries. So that was probably one of a very interesting one. But I get stuff like that all the time. Most people come to me have a problem that I need to figure out. So, but I would say that was a little bit more of an extreme one.
And could you tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel? Because you have some interesting videos. I've been following you on Instagram and I see some of them. I don't see all of them because I haven't, been following you on YouTube, but I will. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So started my YouTube channel like 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and it's gosh, I don't even know why I started it. I think I was just like I wanted to get some like self-help stuff out there. I mentioned this Australian bike fitter who helped me, and he helped me because he had this really cool like blog online, and this was in the early 2000s, and would write about bike fitting. I reached out to him, and he helped me like remotely through email, and had a lot of like free self-help stuff there, and I thought that was really cool. And then here we are in modern times with YouTube and stuff like that. So I wanted to make videos to help people. So my videos are basically like I try to keep them fairly short, like under 10 minutes, covering a variety of topics, including some of the things we talked about, like your saddle hurts, what to do, your hands are going numb, things like that. And I kind of discuss like sort of why it could be happening and then like end it with some actionable things. That way you can kind of like basically watch some of my YouTube videos and maybe fit yourself a little bit. I have a lot of people that watch my channel from like, well, they're all over the world and they just kind of like look at it and try to replicate it at home and get themselves stable in the seat, like I mentioned, or size their feet for their shoes. I also do like some gear reviews where I talk about maybe different saddles I like, give like my top picks, and just kind of gives them some things to kind of ponder and tweak things on their own, pretty much.
Cool.
So that brings up an interesting point. So, if you're going to do, a DIY, bike fit, using a video, and assuming the video is good and that the person follows the instructions, what percent generally do you see from people? Do they get like 70% there, 80% there, or 90% there of a professional bike fit? How good does it generally go?
It really varies. I would say it's not super common that folks get it totally right.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't expect it to be, that would be
Yeah,
the outlier, but
definitely the outlier. I'd say most people, they get better than where they were.
yeah.
And sadly, they end up being better off than where like their maybe local bike shop had them.
Hmm.
Because nothing against shops, but most bike shops are retail oriented, and it's a retail thing. It's not really like
Right. It's a volume thing.
it's a volume thing. So um, oftentimes they're better off than where they were. They have like a better seat height, for example, than where they were, or they have like an aha moment. They're like, oh, that's why my hands are going numb. And then they go to their bike and just look at just all they gotta do is just kind of like look at things closely and
Hmm.
identify just a little things that might be off that I try to describe in the video.
Okay, great.
All
So
right.
that's on my
Well,
YouTube channel.
yeah, why don't you just give us, how to get in touch with you and your YouTube channel and all of that.
Yeah. So go on YouTube, Greshfit, Greshfit. I should be the only Greshfit on there unless there's another person. So you should be able to find me on there, subscribe, and you'll see all my videos. And then greshfit.com, my website, you'll find my contact information on there. I'm also on Instagram under Greshfit. I do a lot of posting there. That's another good place to give me a shout. But yeah, like subscribe to my channel, check it out, watch some of the videos. There's a lot of good self-help stuff there, and I think it's a good way to kind of like, if you're new to the bike fitting thing, is kind of get a little bit of a vibe for what a fit really is, and maybe what you want out of a fitter too. Um, like bike fits aren't cheap. It's like I charge $475 labor plus parts for like my comprehensive fitting, but that reflects all my years of experience. And I also offer a money back guarantee on that too, which is something that I kind of keep over my head purposely, so that I'm kind of held accountable to really give you a good result. So I think by watching the videos, you'll kind of get an idea of like what you want out of a fit, what you want out of your fitter, and hopefully like find someone that like kind of lines up.
Special thanks to the Russo Law Group, Long Island's estate planning, elder law, and special needs law firm. For more information, contact vjrussolaw.com. That's V as in Victor, jrussolaw.com. And Playtry. Everything swim, bike, and run. For more information on Playtry, go to Playtry, playtry.com/store. Or for franchise opportunities, go to playtry.com and you could own your own swim, bike, and run store locally.